Hello and welcome to Craft of the Draft. This podcast is brought to you by getdrafted.com.au, Australia's #1 selection for local footy talent. Post your profile now, get noticed, get challenged, getdrafted.com.au. And what episode we have for you today? We're looking at the top 12 picks now that they're locked in and really how I guess those first dozen selections might unfold and balloon out to close to 20 picks with free agency compo and match bids at the draft. But also there's been plenty of finals action across the country.
Yeah, there has plenty of junior action and plenty of players using the postseason to stand out and strengthen their draft stocks in the Colts League, the SANFL and the WAFL. And we're going to touch on some mature age prospects who are shining at VFL, SANFL and WAFL level as well.
And we're also been tasked with predicting Tasmania's first ever 23-man side for round 1 2028. So we look at the 2027 off-contract crop, their academy boys coming through, their top names for the 2027 draft, and some of the current Tassie players in the AFL. All that and more on this episode. The first 12 picks locked in the draft order, and I think 12 will be close to the halfway mark. There's a lot of change to come in the draft order with compensation picks and match bids, which will kind of discuss what we expect to happen on night one of the draft. But the first 12 selections, as it currently stands, are locked in. Locked doing a bit of heavy lifting there. So we'll have a quick look at the order and then maybe have a discussion on what we see potentially playing out. Not really a mock draft. We're not really tying prospects to every selection, but maybe the plan for some of these clubs that are at the high end of the draft. So the order that we have as it stands is West Coast at pick 1, Richmond at pick 2 and 3. That's second selection tied to North Melbourne. Essendon at pick 4 and 5. That's second selection tied to Melbourne. Pick 6, Gold Coast via Port Adelaide. Pick 7, St Kilda. Pick 8 is Hawthorn via Carlton. Pick 9 is Sydney. Pick 10 is Western Bulldogs. Pick 11 is Fremantle. And pick 12 is GWS. So those last two selections got locked into place on the weekend. I guess that the benefit for Fremantle was that because GWS lost and they were a higher finishing side, Freo actually get a spot earlier, so they come in ahead of the Giants. Where do you want to start? Should we just start at the top? And maybe as we go through this order, we'll probably talk about where maybe a bid or some compensation picks come into play. We've talked a fair bit about West Coast this year.
We have.
All the decisions that they'll have to make on draft night to continue this rebuild. But they probably are beginning to narrow down a few names for pick 1.
Yeah, well, it feels like they've been heavily linked to the big three that are in the open pool and discussed as probably the premier three of the draft class. They've been really heavily linked to Willem Dersma throughout the season. We know they've been linked to Cooper Duff-Tyler as well, and Dyson Sharp, it sounds like they're quite keen on him, and he'd add a great sturdiness to the midfield to come in and play straight away. We know they've really lacked a little bit of grunt in there, so he's someone that can add some sturdiness, as we say. So yeah, whichever way they go, but those are the three that it sounds like at the moment they're really looking for. And then you've got Richmond at this stage with the next two selections. There is the potential Oscar Allen free agency compensation. Yeah,
just on that, I think every conversation we have about pick 1 has to probably include that in the conversation with the Eagles likely having the first two bites of the apple. And I think when we did our mock draft probably a month ago, we spoke about how different their thinking might be with pick 1 when they've got a second selection up for grabs. What I think I'd like to see the Eagles do is actually split pick 2, potentially discuss with Essendon, who could have 3 top 6 selections if Sam Draper's exit gives them band 1. I'd like to see them split pick 2, try and get 2 of Essendon's picks. And then that way they can potentially knock Willem Dersma off with pick 1. And then I think they can still get someone like Dyson Sharp. Because when we did our mock draft as well, it was the Sharps and Greaves that slid because there probably wasn't that perfect alignment for them. But I think if West Coast have that pick 5, pick 6 selection, I think a Dyson Sharp and Ollie Greaves suits them well in that range out instead of pick 1. So bit for West Coast to work on, obviously, with getting in pick 2 and then assessing what they want to do with it. And then on top of that, obviously, they'll need a suitor to come for them. But Essendon are in a great spot, as are Richmond, but I don't think they need to jump up one spot, the Tigers, to get a Dersma or a Duff-Tyler.
Richmond, as we've sort of spoken about, there's probably a couple of positions they can look to fill, one of those being as a half-back, one of those being as a quicker midfielder to complement your Laws and your Smileys, and potentially a small forward as well. So they've got plenty of options to sort of go after, and there is players in that sort of area of the draft that would suit them. Clearly, they've got 2 very high-end selections, so they're in a great spot either way.
Yeah, I think you look at your Sam Grills, Josh Lindsay maybe.
Off halfback.
Depends how much they rate his game outside of his kicking, but I think he's one that will certainly be in that range for them. Dyson Sharp potentially, but are they going too contest heavy with Sammy Lawler and Josh Smiley picked up last year? And
Yevon Philippou, another one.
Yevon Philippou, making his move. Sam Cumming could be a little point of difference player as a forward midfield hybrid. For obviously that pick 3 selection was tied to North Melbourne. For Roos fans who actually kind of want to focus on the draft, but probably don't get as much conversation as they do in most years, given they're not at the top of the tree. On the hit out this week, we actually did some draft matchmaker for the Eagles, Tigers, and North Melbourne. So for your Roos fans, you can go head over to that and we'll have a bit more discussion on what you could be doing with your first pick, which currently is pick 20.
And worth just touching, they're going to have Sam Harris next year, who isn't playing in that under-17s futures game on AFL Grand Final day, but has played some very, very strong footy across the course of the season through quarter cannons midfield, really powerful, wins lots of clearances. So keep an eye out next year for a very, very good prospect in Sam Harris. But we move down to Gold Coast at pick 6 at the moment. We don't expect they'll actually have pick 6 because we know that they're obviously going to have a couple of bids that they're going to need to match for Zeke Ewland and Dylan Patterson that'll come at the pointy end.
Yeah, Zeke the Freak, Dill the Thrill. I think they got Kobe and Bo. I haven't got nicknames for them just yet. Maybe Cool Hand Kobe and Bo the Butte. But there's a bit to work on there. Where those bids come, though, as you said, pick 6 won't really be theirs, but they could have a bid or 2 by then. I think Eston will be putting in a bid in Richmond potentially, given that their second selection maybe shovels to about pick 4 on draft night. So, I'd expect 2 before pick 6, and it's probably to be Ewland and Patterson, meaning Gold Coast will have to get a bit creative, but what they did last year to get themselves in this position, 3 first-round picks, one of them tied to Port Adelaide at pick 6, as what we've seen pretty much every year for the past 5 years, is they get these future selections in, having to move around for academy kids the year prior, and it just sets them up year on year. So it's perpetual and it's working to perfection for Gold Coast. So that'll be their draft plan, pretty much nailing academy kids. There was some talk that they could work themselves up to the very pointy end of the draft, and maybe talk with West Coast around, if we get pick 2, you guys can have some of our first round selections, and that way they avoid potentially West Coast putting in a really early bid and really throwing their draft plans out of whack, and they could get an open pool talent. I think it's unlikely.
No, I don't think that'll happen.
I don't think they can come away with a top 2 or 3 prospect on top of Ewland and Patterson and then I think that just puts a line through Adensall and potentially Coulson as well. So
and Murray
and Collins. They've had such a great crop this year, and I think they'll want to stick with picking out of that group themselves. So as always, it's a different kind of draft year for the Gold Coast Suns, who are playing with their own currency. Pick 7, St Kilda, who I think from a draft order point of view have done well to get in front of Carlton, so finishing below the Blues, because the Blues are likely to get band 1 compensation for DeConing. Don't know if they get that for Silvani, maybe an end of first. It sounds like it's a good deal for Jack Silvani from the Saints, but I think he's just a bit older than what a normal free agent is, so that might hinder their chances of getting a second band 1 selection. So the Saints avoid jumping even a few more spots back, but pick 7 could still be pick 11 or 12 if we're getting a bid for Harry Dean, which probably might occur before Carlton if they do get a pick 9 as
that'll
compo.
be something they'll have to keep in mind.
If Essendon get their free agency compo for Draper, if we have bids for Annabelle, for Ewland and for Patterson, then there's that pick 7 quickly balloons out to pick 12, which we mentioned is probably the halfway mark of the draft for this year's count. But for the Saints, well, that's the convo, isn't it? Where exactly are you picking, on who you're picking from, is going to be a fascinating equation, because they are another club. I would think if there's one of those top early bid boys available, they'll be pulling the trigger and forcing a rival club's hand for a match bid.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we expect that based on some of the chatter that's come out of St Kilda in recent times. But as I think we've discussed before, it's probably speed, that they need a little bit of speed around the midfield to become better in transition and probably suit the modern game a little bit more is how I'd see St Kilda. Hawthorn's an interesting one at pick 8.
Yeah, I think when we did our mock draft, I had the Hawks. Had about 5 names. I think all of them were taken in the 5 preceding selections. Is it midfield or is it not? is kind of the question. I think they're so settled everywhere else.
Yeah.
And while they have Josh Ward and Cam McKenzie, I wouldn't mind just an extra kind of
A-grade
midfield and pushing and putting pressure on some of the guys. And the top line, Will Day, A-grade already, as is John Newcomb. And talk about Zach Merritt could certainly have to change their draft plans entirely, and they're probably not at this point in the draft if they're trading for a player of his caliber. But we're working in reality at the moment. Is it Ollie Greaves, a player they really tried to push hard for in there as a potential club type prospect preseason, got denied, and obviously they've put a lot of work into him and highly rate him, so he could be one. I think Sam Cumming was one I was hoping would be on the board when we did that last mock draft, and he went to one of the Essendon selections. I think he'd be a nice fit for them as well. And then I think a guy like Sam Grill, but I really like a Jacob Farrow for them. As we spoke last week, his draft range is probably, it could be as early as a top 10 selection.
7 or 8 to 15.
So I think Jacob Farrow will be one that they'll have circled. That might rely on who slips through out of the selections before they're on the clock.
The next two, I think, pretty consensually, Sydney need a key position player to add to their stocks, and then the Western Bulldogs need to either sturdy up their defence or get a good front and centre forward in their attacking zone. That's how I'd read picks 9 and 10.
I agree. The Swans, I think, might benefit from Max King and Lockie Carmichael shuffling into a late first round, early second round conversation potentially. I think more likely the former in a late first round picks for those two, and we could have an early bid for one of them still. But I like a key position talent role. They're settled on rucks. Brody Grundy into Will Green's going to be a really nice transition for them in the coming years. Probably maybe a key defender. It's probably just an area they've struggled to unlock outside of maybe Tom McCartan in the last few years. Key forwards, they've got options there, but they probably just need one of them to stand out a bit taller and maybe some extra selection pressure there. So is it an Aidan Schubert, a Mitch Marsh for the Swans at pick 9? And then, as you mentioned, the Dogs. Key defensive depth. Looks like they're trying to get a ready-made key defender through the trade period. So if that's not successful, then maybe they look to partner Jed Busslinger with someone for the long haul. Who that is, Xavier Taylor, or is he tall enough for what they're after? I think they really want some height down there, which Busslinger provides, but I think you just need someone to match that as well. And as we've discussed, it's not really that closing in on 200 centimetre key defender outside of Harry Dean. So it'll be a fascinating one for the Dogs. Pardon me, and how their draft night unfolds too.
And then the next two, Fremantle and GWS. If he's still on the board at this stage, he's coming with an absolute bullet. Sully Roby, I think, would suit both of these two clubs. The player on everyone's lips out of the Eastern Rangers, who's the powerful forward who can go into the midfield. So I think that's a very GWS selection, and I think Freo could certainly benefit from his dynamism and firepower as well.
I like it. I really do. The Dockers, I don't think they're going to be active in a trade space. I think they'll probably sit at this mark. They did like Berry last year. And I think they kind of had to shuffle a few things around on draft night and ended up getting Murphy Reid, which just turned out to be a astute selection for them. So I like the Roby pick. Farrow, another one.
Local.
Let me just have a think who else we're probably thinking about here. Do they go with Lockie Doverston and get some spark in that front half? Noah Hibbins-Hargraves, X-Factor player. A Yevon Philippou, a Harley Barker out of SA. So there's a few there for them. And then GWS, similar with Gold Coast in a different way still, is that they kind of play with a different currency and they look at a certain type of player and sometimes that comes down to where they come from. But I like the Sullivan Roby call and what we kind of discussed about him on last week's episode.
Well, it's a good segue, the Sullivan Roby one, into the next part of the show, an update on the Coates League Finals. The quarterfinals played on the weekend. GWV Rebels will play the Eastern Rangers in one side of the prelim final, and on the other side of the draw, Gippsland Power take on the Sandringham Dragons this weekend after all four won their quarterfinals. And we'll start at the Eastern Rangers game against the Calder Cannons. The three bolters performed for the Eastern Rangers. They're the trio that are really propelling this deep finals run and have them right there or thereabouts in terms of premiership favouritism. And it's really, really positive that they're getting these extra games in the postseason to show what they've got, because we know players like Ollie Greaves and Xavier Taylor have long been established. Lockie Doverston too, but Oscar Taylor, very, very good on the weekend, again off half-back. Marcus Krasnodamska's probably played his best game in about a month in the ruck, was really, really damaging, probably the best ruck on the day, quite comfortably. We obviously, Cooper Duff-Tytler goes through the ruck, but he spent some more time forward for the Calder Cannons, so Marcus Krasnodamskas really enjoyed his time in there. And then, Sully Roby, another best on-ground performance, so he is coming really, really quickly, and top 15, top 20 sounds really high for him to someone who's casual or might not have followed the draft for the last month, but such is the obsession over what he's been able to do and what his skill set is that I wouldn't put a limit on it, particularly with 2 games still to go in the season.
I had a mate ask me, is he a top 5 chance?
Yeah, I've been asked the same thing.
And I can't rule it out.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I probably like the top 15 chance.
Yeah.
But you certainly can't rule it out if he keeps playing as he has in this final series.
Yeah.
He's got all eyes on him, and it's the perfect stage when you do miss out on the national champs as such an outsider when they got underway and wasn't really in that conversation. So what he's doing now in the Coates Talent League finals has been absolutely fantastic.
And just to finish on Sully, it's one thing to have 40-3 and absolutely dominate a game, and that's as good a game as I've probably seen this year in the Coates League, as I think I said last week, but to then get all the hype throughout the week and everyone's suddenly talking about you as a draft prospect for the first time ever, come out and do it again, shows the immense talent and the immense mental fortitude as well. We'll move on to another, just to finish on that, Felix Knipe, 30 disposals, clearly best on ground for the Calder Cannons, and I thought Hamish Bird was quite good as well from their point of view. But we'll move on to the Rebels game against the Dandenong Stingrays. Probably felt like Dandenong Stingrays should have won this one, probably should have been up by an insurmountable margin
13 behinds, was it?
Yeah, something like that. And it felt like they had a lot of ascendancy as well. They just didn't capitalise on it. And Charlie McKinnon, 3 goals in the last quarter to keep them in it, including one after the siren. Took an enormous one-on-one mark that he really had to take for them to be any chance to win it. Kicks a goal from 35 on an angle, and GWV, after making a run to the grand final last year when they did have so many draft prospects, this year with a much more unheralded list, it wouldn't be a surprise if the only player that gets drafted out of there is Taylor Byrne, have made it to the preliminary finals off the back of some Charlie McKinnon magic, and I thought Ethan Drever was quite strong as well as a bottom major. Yeah,
there's interesting comparisons with last year's squad. I think we saw, so you got your Lawlers and your Jonty Falls, and they were kind of spearheading that side early, and then they had some injury issues and sometimes, I guess, like you said, through these deeper runs, you get more looks and you get more guys popping up. Look what Jacko O did last year, along with Ollie Hannaford and a few others out of the Rebels. And Charlie McKinnon's got the hot hand or the hot boot or whatever you want to call it. And that's just continued since round 1 all the way through.
59 goals he's up to this season.
God, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
A thrilling win for the Rebels, and their season progresses to play the Rangers next week.
Yeah, it does. And then the other 2 games were played on the Sunday at Shepley Oval, a really blowy Shepley Oval, incredibly windy conditions. You had one end where Willem Dersma didn't make the distance from 30 out in a set shot, and you had the other end where players were kicking goals from 1 metre attacking side of the centre circle.
Yeah, right.
That's how the conditions sort of played out, but both teams got 2 quarters with the wind, and both teams had 2 quarters against the wind. The Gippsland Power got the job done against the Geelong Falcons, despite only leading for 2.5 minutes of that game. It did feel like they were always going to get over the top of the Falcons. The lead wasn't that great from the Falcons at 3/4 time. In the end, it was Zach O'Keefe that kicked the winning goal. Willem Dersma kicked a late one as well.
You said you wanted to see Dersma pop up late.
He hasn't been playing much midfield for the Gippy Power, but certainly seized his moment when it mattered, and he kicked their first goal as well in the second quarter, and just had some wow moments where he read the fly of the ball really well. But the player from the Gippsland Power game that I want to put on the radar is Jonah Walker. So he was one who came into the season with a lot of hype out of the Gippsland Power region as having had such a strong pre-season. His conditioning was really, really good, and came into the season probably a little bit quieter to start, and that was when he was playing as a forward ruck. Then he went down back and had a couple of games down there. His second game down there, he took 11 marks, and really impressed with the way he was able to read the flight of the footy and use his power to be really damaging out of the back half, and then unfortunately got injured playing a local game for Bairnsdale, and that was when he was right on the precipice of Vic Country selection as a defender as well, so that sort of ruled him out of the middle 2 months of the season, which was really unfortunate. But he's come back and played a really strong game on the weekend, was the clear best on ground, kicked 2 goals from outside 50, and in a low scoring game, I thought, his contributions were really, really valuable. His kicking penetration really good. His power around stoppage is a real point of difference. So just one to keep an eye out for as a to hopefully he plays well on the weekend and can help Gippsland be really competitive and potentially get over the top of Sandringham.
Good position to stand out in for Walker, so that's great for his stocks at this time of the year. And Sandy Dragons, another one to advance, looking at, was it 4 straight now? They're outside of the Ashcroft era, so there might be some questions about it. But they bat deep, as they always do, and obviously through the middle part of the year, they'll struggle with who they can pick from. Yeah. But at this point of the year, they've got just about everyone at their disposal.
Well, it was another reasonably low-scoring game. So one to put on the radar from a Sandringham Dragons point of view is Willis Reedy. He kicked the 3 goals, a small forward, 170 centimetres, plays the high forward role. It's a tricky one to master. He seems to understand it quite well and just has an innate way of hitting the scoreboard. Took an enormous hanger against the Oakley Chargers to finish the home and away season, and has kicked 3 goals in both of Sandringham's finals, and just seems to pop up at the right times. Plays a lot taller than he is, but he's quite damaging at ground level too. And he's one just to keep an eye on as well. I'm really interested to see how he goes this weekend because he's quite an interesting story. He wasn't on Sandringham's list last year. He was injury interrupted in pre-season and came into the side in about round 6, and I think he's also spent some time down back but looks really comfortable as a high forward. So looking forward to seeing if he can have another standout game on the weekend, because he's certainly one that's entertaining to watch.
Might not have played, but Zayden Lockwood's one you kind of keen to get some chatter?
Yeah, he's I think his last 5 or 6 games really, really impressive. Getting a little bit of chatter. I actually had a chat to Bendigo's coach last week about him. Story on zerohanger.com if you want to find out a little bit more. But effectively started the season as a key defender, was going just okay as an overager, and you probably need to be really standing out if you want to hold your spot as a 19-year-old at Coates League level. And then what he's done since then is he's gone into the ruck and been really, really impressive with his mobility around the ground, his athleticism, and also some of the work he does defensively, getting back, taking some big intercept marks. So he's 198 centimetres. If he was to make it to a VFL or an AFL list, he's certainly not going to be a ruck. But playing in the ruck just allowed him to get around the ball a little bit more, and it's allowed him to show some of those defensive attributes, but also some of that flair. And he's been an enormous improver through the Coates League. So one just to keep a little bit of an eye on. If he does get a state combine invite, which he doesn't currently have, he'd be one that would test really, really well, particularly with the vertical jump. So hopefully he does get added, because that would be that'd be great for his stocks. And worked really, really hard last year. Just interrupted with illness. I think he was laid out 4 times for Bendigo last year or something along those lines, and just couldn't get any sort of continuity with his footy. Now that he's got it, he looks like one to watch. So just wanted to put that on the radar. But Bendigo unfortunately knocked out last week with the last kick of the game against the Geelong Falcons. But that probably just about wraps up the CTL Finals update. Mitch?
Yeah, massive. Plenty of work there, and some good games coming up Saturday at Casey Fields.
Yep.
Let's roll over west. WAFL Colts Finals nearing the end. We know the Dogs have clinched one of the grand final spots with a win over East Fremantle.
Yep.
And the Sharks will come up against Claremont this week, who had a nice comfy win on the weekend. So that's certainly narrowing at the moment. We've seen, I think, Claremont are coming from an outside position a little bit with probably the star talent that's stepping up for them. Yep. Cody Curtin and Charlie Banfield have both had some good runs late into the season.
And Cody Curtin, the 5 goals he kicked on the weekend, bouncing back from a 1-goal performance, and you probably look at it and you say, Cody Curtin, he often kicks big bags of goals at WAFL under 18s level. How much weight does that hold? But he played on Lockie Carpenter, the West Perth skipper. So he's one that's really, really highly regarded out west as being one of the competition's premier defenders in that competition. And Cody Curtin was able to get the job done over him. So I think that's a really impressive player to have matched up on and clearly gotten the better of.
Yeah, and Charlie Banfield with I think it was team high 25 disposals, tackles in there as well. I think it was about half a dozen. So that physical side of his game is something that he certainly wants to grow into.
Yep.
So that's going to be quite exciting for them. And Lucas Robinson, another one that you're kind of keen to highlight?
Yeah, well, 35 disposals, was really, really big in the contest and loved what he did both offensively and defensively. So he's a player who is tied to Fremantle's Next Generation Academy and has been quite highly regarded for the last 18 months. He had a very good under-16s national championships and has probably, he's been quite good this year, but went to the next level on the weekend. So yeah, really good to see. And in terms of a contest player, he's one of the better contest players in the 2026 AFL draft. So Freo fans, one to keep an eye on.
I didn't touch Longmuir Fat. I think he had a couple goals in that win over the Sharks.
Dominated school footy through the middle of the year, Taj Longmuir.
I think I mentioned Charlie Banfield before, and Harper Banfield's probably in that bracket as well with Taj, as big names out of WA school footy who are, for them for next year is going to be quite a big year for them out in WA. And then, so we've got in 2 weeks' time or next week, South Fremantle hosting one of the Sharks or Claremont.
Hey guys, just dropping in to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by getdrafted.com.au, Australia's #1 selection for local footy talent. If you're a player looking for your next adventure, simply create a profile with your details and connect with a local club that's looking for a player like you. GetDrafted.com.au can set you up with a new club, new teammates, a new state, and even a new job. Talk about a game-changing career move. It's fast, easy, and built for your ultimate footy journey. Find your next club now at GetDrafted.com.au.
All right, we can finally talk about some grand final footy because the SANFL under-18s season decider this week. West Adelaide plays Sturt. They played off a couple of weeks ago with the Bloods getting the upper hand, and I think there was some spoils shared among the best performers that game, with Mitch Marsh, I think, kicking 3. On the other side, I think Jet Darlitz was among the best. Taj Garrett is a 16-year-old, couple goals from, I think it was 16 touches. Harvey Chapman's another 16-year-old playing for the Double Blues. And then you've got your household names like your Louis Callaway in there as well. But for, I guess, Sturt, who didn't have the week off, so West Adelaide progressed through straight to the grand final. And Sturt picked up a win over Woodville West Torrens by a couple kicks on Saturday to set up what's going to be an enticing season decider. Yeah,
absolutely. Jet Darlitz, we talked with the Coates League, the Eastern Trio being really benefited by the fact that their team's going quite deep. Jet Darlitz's form in the last month or so has been excellent. We know he's got the ability to find the footy off halfback, distribute really well as well. He's someone that they try and get the ball in the hands of, and he has been very, very effective in that role. So I think he's one just to keep an eye on. And I was having a chat to someone about this actually on Sunday, that it wouldn't surprise me if there are a few of those South Australian prospects that don't seem to get as much chatter that go a little bit higher than you expect. And Jet Darlitz certainly shapes as one towards the back end of the draft or the middle of the draft that could be a good pickup for a club looking for a halfback with a point of difference.
Good kick. Very good inside 50 kick. And user from outside. I guess from the back half as well. Pardon me. What's interesting we'll talk about Sturt first before we get to the Bloods. But what's interesting for Sturt is the reliance on some of their, I guess, not top age guys. Like we talked about, your Callaways, Roberts, Thompsons, Darlitz, but like I was mentioned before, Garrett and Chapman. But Ivan Wilkinson, their bottom-aged forward, is kicking 43 goals from 16 games. Added another 3 on the weekend. Hasn't gone goalless at all this year. So he's going to be a really big piece for Sturt and how they in their chances of a premiership. But the at the other end of the field, it probably is Mitch Marsh, the West Adelaide spearhead, who could take the game by the scruff of the neck. Yeah, it's interesting. The positive with Mitch Marsh is he's been given some opportunities to play on a wing in recent times, and I think I was a little bit critical mid-year, or not critical, but certainly questioned where he sort of sat in the draft when everyone was talking about him potentially being a top 10 prospect. Just given his height, he's never going to spearhead an AFL forward line, and he's been very good when he's played on the wing. So do they continue to showcase what he can do on a wing? We know he's got that beautiful field kick and he moves so excellently. He's quite mobile and probably suited for that role. Or do they utilise that natural forward craft that he's got, knowing that, if he gets some momentum, he could tear the game apart with his goal kicking? That'll be one for the West Adelaide coaching staff to weigh up. So this Sunday at Adelaide Oval, West Adelaide plays Sturt for the under-18s title. Now, plenty of juniors finals action on at the moment. We actually want to talk some state league finals action too, because some of the best stories from draft night come from, I guess, some of the players that get picked up out of the VFL, WAFL and SANFL senior seasons. And we'll start with the VFL with what's been quite an entertaining finals campaign so far, and a lot of that might come down to what Frankston have done this year.
Yeah, absolutely. First preliminary final in 28 years for the Dolphin, bouncing back from a 3-goal game against Footscray, where it was quite concerning, and to play against Casey, which coming into the final series I thought were the premiership favourites, and a lot of people say Footscray or Box Hill, who were dominant all throughout the year. I was really high on what Casey could produce, but for Frankston to use that home ground advantage, and I was down on Saturday night, it was absolutely unbelievable, the atmosphere. There's a couple of times you actually had to check yourself when Casey kicked a goal about whether it had actually gone through or not, because you just hear a pin drop, whereas Frankston, the crowd really got behind them, and I thought the player who really led that was Jackson Voss, who's been discussed as a Fothergill Round Mitchell medal contender, and he is one that I can absolutely, having watched him up close now, understand the hype around him. He has a booming left foot kick. I reckon it goes 60 metres, and he takes the game on. He has a bit of speed too, which helps him coming out of half-backs. So for a team looking for a plug-and-play player in that position, I think he feels it really well, and he's so courageous in the air as well. So he created turnover and was able to slice apart Casey, particularly through the middle of the game when Frankston opened up a lead. And then it was great to see Tom Blamiers, who doesn't often hit the scoreboard, kick a goal to put Frankston 11 points in front. It was probably, in a lot of ways, it was probably the winning goal late in the game for Frankston. Bailey Lambert put the icing on the cake not long thereafter. But another Fothergill Round Mitchell medal contender. Both Jackson Voss and Tom Blamiers have had great influence in Frankston going up the ladder, and it was good to see them play very well in a big game.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, while St Kilda have a chance to still pick him up, Tom Blamiers was part of Sandringham Zebra's system, and in the year that they said they'll pick up someone out of the Zebras for a rookie list spot, he was among those names in the mix. Left for Frankston at the end of that year and has had a stellar season this year at the Dolphins. So, he'll be one of those names from a national draft point of view, just given age and profile and what he's offered at a state league level. And Collingwood have a close look at him as well, because I think he's a member of their media team or in
membership,
and their staff there. So that'll be quite fascinating to see how his year unfolds. Head over to the SANFL. Glenelg on a bit of a roll, but one name who you kind of put on the map early this year, who's got a state combine invite, you're liking the look of still.
Latrell Sumner Pickett, the 8 disposals and a goal, so he's not doing heaps, but he's one of those players that just has 3 or 4 moments every game, and it's really, really standing out, and he's starting to get a lot of chatter. So just worth continuing to put his name on the radar, because I think he is one that probably still isn't getting the attention he deserves externally, based on how he's viewed in the industry.
I think I said Glenelg. Also, Norwood are probably the side with most of the talk. Sturt have been the standard setters all year in the top SANFL level, but what Norwood have been able to do, a bit of a slow start for them to the year. I think obviously some of that comes down to the players they had available. They got Nick Roker back from the Swan Districts this year, which was probably one of the biggest signings in the SANFL. But Bain and Lowe was one who trained with Freo over the summer, got injured, needed shoulder surgery, and put him out for most of the year. And he's come back and he's been an absolute ace for the Redlegs this year. So they'll come up against the Tigers this week for a spot against Sturt in the grand final. And then just looking at the WAFL as well. So preliminary final week, East Perth playing Claremont for a spot up against South Fremantle. So the Dogs are having a pretty good year at all levels. They could take out a couple of flags, and they'll wait to see who wins between the Royals and Tigers. A
bit of a special one for this episode, Mitch. We've got Tassie Best 23 that we're going to try and predict a combination of some 2027 open pool prospects, some Tassie Academy prospects, so some Tassie Devils, some talent from the Apple Isle, some Tasmanian listed AFL players, so players who might be enticed to return home and be part of that inaugural lineup, and then some others that are off contract in 2027 and for one reason or another might be lured down to Tassie. So we have that. There's plenty to go through.
Let's go. Yeah. So as you mentioned, there's the 4 category of players that they'll likely look at in their recruitment. We've spoken a little bit about their 2027 crop of academy kids. We might start there. We'll go through kind of potential targets from each category and then look at the predicted 23. But You got your Hazelwoods, your Gullivers, your Olivers, your Husbands, Whitneys, Dawkins, Russell. They're going to bat pretty deep. It's going to be a nice year for them from an academy point of view if their under-16s carnival is anything to go by.
Yeah, it will be because we know the last couple of years, Tassie, or certainly last year, a little bit quieter on the draft front. This year they might get Avery Thomas, they might get Jack Miller. But they certainly do look to bat quite deep. They've got plenty of talent. Sam Husband's one of the highest rated players in the country. And Lucas Hazelwood was box office at the Under-16s National Championship. But the great positive there is they didn't win it off the back of two players. They won it off the back of great depth. So, and that's Division 2 of the Under-16s Development Championships that they won. So, yeah, there's some players to watch, and then some others in the open pool. We expect, obviously, that they're going to have lots of access to players at the pointy end. So, Max Thompson's got some exposure from the Bendigo Pioneers as a small forward. They've got Baxter Schruck, who's really highly regarded as well. Axel Walsh as a ruck. Jake Miller, the key forward out of the Western Jets. I think there's a lot of Vic Metro talent for that draft in particular, looking at it very early. So, there's plenty of players casting 2 years ahead to get excited about, but we know things change frequently. So, we'll hold the excitement to some degree.
There's going to be some fascination around the early form of this draft for Tassie, given the concessions they'll have will be one thing, but the asterisks that will come with some of those selections, in that they'll need to actually trade them for players. So one half of it is they'll get the best talent in the comp. You'd think they'd have the first pick, maybe first, second or third pick at the draft, and then from picks, any other top 10 picks they might have to use on the trade space, or might have to trade a certain amount of top 10 picks that they're given from the AFL. So there'll be a balance of picking the best 20-27 players on top of their academy boys. And then on top of that, what kind of selections do they get to use in a trade space to lure dare I say, Gary Ablett type like the Gold Coast, Gold Coast Suns did not that long ago. So there'll be a bit of a balance for them in that regard. In saying that, on some of the best players in the draft are probably going to be out of their reach, just given what Kobe Buick, Zemez Pilot, Louis Salopek, Davida Roden have done in the early stages of their under-16s carnival. So there'll be plenty to kind of unfold in that early end of the draft space for Tassie, and how they kind of look at the draft pool and look at the potential trade talent on
and
offer.
all of this with the caveat that Tassie do get a team up and running when they hope they will, and B, that the academy rules, like you say, don't change, or perhaps that does give them access to players such as your Davida Rodens.
It's going to be fascinating for the AFL, because I think they're starting to turn towards putting a bit of a restriction on how accessible these academy kids are, but at the same time I don't think they want to be limiting how quickly Tassie can build the best possible list they can for both the now and the future. One key part that's probably been spoken about at length already over the last 12 to 18 months is the Tassie boys already in the AFL that will be at the top of their list as trade options. So Riley Sanders, Colby McKercher, Lockie Cowan, James League, Ari Schoenmaker, Seth Campbell, Ryan Mansell, Sam Banks, and Chase Jones are probably in that nice age bracket for them. Some of the older guys, Alex Pearce, Toby Nankervis, Jake Colajasny, might be touch and go. I'd like to think Alex Pearce gets there, but maybe not as a player, and maybe as a coach or mentor for the players, just given how proud he is of Tasmania and obviously the iconic player he is as a captain already of Fremantle. Toby Nankervis, I'd like to think he might still be around
for a year.
Same thing, great ruck
almost
coach.
a Todd Goldstein type role.
Exactly that. Takes on more of a mentorship for an Axel Walsh or a Hugo Semler if they're one of the two ruck options that kind of find their way to Tasmania. Jake Colajasny, I think, will be at that veteran age, which you still need. You still need some of those experienced players. I think we had Guy McKenna on on Hanging Out last week, and he spoke about sometimes you just need some of these AFL experienced guys to play VFL footy, because then if you just throw an under 18 side into the VFL, they really struggle. And a player like Jake Colajasny could be that. He might be past his best at the AFL at that age. He might not be in the best 22 for Tassie, but he could be playing in the VFL as just that cool head that can kind of bring some experience at that level and still play a game above most others.
The other part of that is in order to try and encourage players to come down and play for Tassie's VFL side, we know that they've lined up, you talked about Sandy before, having that VFL sort of golden ticket onto an AFL list. That's what Tassie have got. So that will be good for some of those under 18s players. Clearly, it's not going to be someone that has AFL experience, you wouldn't think, unless they're a former AFL player onto a VFL list. But it's still someone that's a bit more mature aged. So that will assist some of those younger players from Tasmania as well.
One name we've already mentioned on this show is Bain and Lowe, Tassie heritage.
Yeah.
Now playing at Norwood. He's 22 now, so he'd be 24, 25. Could be a perfect VFL option for them, and he could be, and I think he probably is already AFL ready. Yeah. Okay. And obviously Freo liked what they saw from him last year to get him as a SSP train-on player, and he lost the spot to Isaiah Dudley, but that also came because he hurt his shoulder, and that injury really curtailed his chances. So, I think he might be one to watch. We're talking a year or two out.
We are. Jeremy Webley to coach that VFL side, a very, very good appointment. He's been the Tassie Devils under 18s coach for recent times, and knows Tassie footy like no one else. So I think that's a good appointment. But we'll get into what we predict to be the best 23. Mitch?
Well, should we talk the off-contract 27 guys? Because I don't want to drop in some star names without having to preface why they might be in there. They're having a quick look at the off-contract list for 2027. So this is all assuming that the Tassie come in for 2028 and they'll get some access potentially to some of these clubs. It sounds like if a player's off-contract that year, they'll pretty much act as a free agent, whether they're eligible for free agency or not. So that would mean that Tassie won't have to trade for them if they're off-contract. They can just sign them, and then that club will get compensation. Whereas a contracted player, they might actually have to trade for. And I believe that will be one per club. They can't just go poach 4 or 5 off-contract guys from one club, as might be the case with Richmond when you talk about Banks, Nankervis, Mansell, Campbell. So few of the headline names to think about for Tassie at the end of 2027 who are off contract: Logan Morris, Kyle Lohman, Darcy Wilmot out of Brisbane, Bo McCreary, Nick Martin, Caleb Sarong, Sam De Koning, Noah Anderson, Matt Rao, Sam Flanders, Lockie Ash, Tom Green, Trent Rivers, Charlie Gombin, Mitch Georgiadis, Jack Sinclair, Nazar Wanganeen Millera, and Chad Warner. Now, they're not going to get all of them. Even if they got 1 or 2 of them, I think that would be great. So we've kind of picked 4 to 5. I think 4 of those, and there's a couple other guys, obviously, from the Tassie group that are at other clubs who aren't maybe at that level that we've got in this side. So I've picked up Sandra Koning. We've picked up Logan Morris. So just an option at either end of the field. Nick Martin on a wing and Matt Rao as a follower just from that crop, who aren't exactly Tassie tied, but they're off contract that year. The amount of money that you think Tassie will have loaded. I think there's also talk about them having a bigger signing bonus. They get... maybe it's more than 7 figures to kind of spend on just signing bonuses for some players. So that there'll be really lucrative offers, maybe ones that surpass what Gary Ablett Jr. was on at Gold Coast. So let's have a look at our predicted 23. Should we take it a line at a time? Full back line, we've got Lockie Gowan, Sam De Koning, and Jake Kolodjasny. So all experienced AFL players, a couple from the Cats. You want to take the half back line?
You take the half back line, I'll take the next 2.
Sounds good. Sam Banks. It's Harvey Chapman, so one of South Australia's top under-16s talents, looking like a really good key defender for the Crow Eaters, and he'll be at this stage towards the top of that 2027 pack. And then James Leake, who's going to bring some great utility should he become a Devil at the end of his time with GWS.
Midfield line, Ryan Mansell from Richmond has built himself into a very nice, handy player. Riley Sanders has been heavily linked to Tassie. We know he played for the Tassie Devils before he played for the Sandringham Dragons. He's a Tassie boy born and bred. And Nick Martin, as we talked about, would be one that Tassie would love to get out of the Essendon Bombers. The half-forward line, Baxter Schruck, one of the highest-rated players already in the 2027 crop, a powerful midfielder, took out Vic Metro's MVP. Logan Morris, we had a chat about this off air, whether it's Logan Morris. I think he's really settled at Brisbane. Logan Morris, obviously he's already interstate, so that's clearly no issue with him. I'd preference Mitch Georgiadis, or I'd think that Mitch Georgiadis is more likely. Clearly they're both very, very good players and will continue to be so, and Logan Morris has got plenty of growth left as well. And then Sam Husband, also one of the highest rated players, but he's from Tassie, so that's perfect for Tassie. Hopefully he continues on his trajectory.
Looking at the full forward line, so Lucas Hazelwood, Chase Oliver, a couple of the Tassie boys as well.
Yep.
So that's why I really wanted to get a Morris or a Georgiades in
Yep.
here. I think they're just looking too lean
Yeah.
in attack. And if it isn't Morris, could be another Western Jets forward in Jake Miller. But
Yeah.
but I think they just need to get
Yep.
some experience in that forward line. Obviously, they're not going to be getting Jack Gunston, but
Yep.
even just if a player of his kind of age profile
Yeah,
who can
yeah.
just steady the ship a little bit of what North Melbourne have done with Jack Darling. There probably just wasn't that many options out there for 2027. And
Yep.
if they go chips in on Logan Morris, who could be arguably the premier forward come this time of his career, I think he'll be a clear target for them. Also, if he remains off contract. And then Max Thompson, one of my favourite players coming through the under-16s champs out of Bendigo as a lively deep forward threat who can also push up the ground.
Yep. Absolutely.
Followers, we've got Toby Nankervis in there. The ruck spot is probably the hardest to select.
Yeah.
We'll probably assume they might take Axel Walsh towards the top of the draft, but he's just not going to be a player they're going to throw to the Wolves round 1, 2028, or even for much of their first season at the very least. So I'd like to think they look for an experience. They probably might go for more of that Lloyd Meek bargain ruck option who can just hold his weight a little bit. But if Toby Nankervis is still fit and firing and able to have a year or two in the ruck spot, I think he'd be a perfect selection for them. Matt Rowe's the big signing in midfield. When you think kind of that Gary Ablett headline act player to come down. It was, you have him, Sarong, and Tom Green and Noah Anderson. I think Noah Anderson as captain of the Suns might be a bit harder to pry out of Carrara. But I think with the interest Matt Rowe will continue to have over the next few years, and potentially pulling him south of Queensland might be for Tassie to do. And then Colby McKercher linking up with Riley Sanders once more at the Devils will be a nice prospect for Tassie in building this list.
And then on the interchange bench, Max Gulliver, who was one of the Tassie Devils' best at the Under-16s National Championships, Mason Whitney as well. Axel Walsh will probably be that relieving forward like you talked about early in his career out of WA, one of the highest rated prospects across the country, if not the highest rated prospects. Josh Jarrod and Avery Thomas, who is a highly rated player this year, Mitch, in the draft circles, will be coming out of contract, so he could be one that could look for a move back home. Jack Miller, another one in that category, but an athletic defender, Avery Thomas is.
Yeah, I like Jarrod. I like what I saw from him in under-16s. I would love to put Jake Miller and Jack Miller together, but I think taking Jake was probably just one too many top picks when you've got Schruck. You got who else did we have here? Walsh, Thompson on top of the academy boys. So that's the kind of blend we've gone for. We'd love to hear feedback on what we got wrong and maybe what we got right, but usually it's the former. I don't know how this side would go for their first year, but you'd like to think Sanders, McKercher, Rowell, Morris, you're doing something right with the age profile that they're at that time.
Absolutely.
So there's a bit there to unpack. Hopefully it's a side just as strong when Tassie come around.
Yep, no, certainly. Good show today, Mitch. Good to chat all things Colts League Finals. Good to chat all things SANFL and WAFL Finals, as well as some mock draft to some degree at the top of the show and everything that's going on, as well as projecting forward to what Tassie could look like. Get in touch with us if you've got any feedback or you want to see anything in particular you want us to see us discuss any prospects. Stay in touch with zerohanger.com.au for all your AFL news. For everything draft related, head over to Craft of the Draft on Instagram, and we will see you next week.
Ciao.